everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in. This is the Yak Shack Podcast. We're your hosts, Alan
and Jessica. We're going to be discussing some of your favorite topics.
But mainly kayaking.
A little bit of fishing.
Plus,
we're going to have a real good time.
Let's get to it.
Welcome back, friends and family. Another episode of the Yak Shack Podcast. Woo! Coming at you. Ow, ow. And we are super excited to be here. Thank you so much for tuning in.
Yes, and in this week's episode, we are interviewing two of our good friends that are both avid kayak anglers and tournament anglers as well. And in their interview, they're going to share with us some information about tournament life, some tips that they've experienced on the water, and a lot of great stuff, so you don't want to miss this one.
That's right. They've been traveling all over. They've been fishing a long time. They know a lot more than Jessica and myself. So
true.
Let's, without further ado, let's get them on. Okay, so I've got two of our good friends, Dan, the fisherman, Perry, and Jeremie, the jig genie himself, a.k.a. Juice Baker, on the line with us, guys. How y'all doing?
Good. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, doing well, man. We appreciate the shout-out.
Hey,
Did you realize he was going to throw in the nicknames like that?
I
had a feeling. Yeah, I had a feeling it was coming. But he is the only one that calls me the jig genie.
That's right.
I actually really like that. That's awesome.
Yeah, man. Dan, the fisherman, too. I mean, listen, you've been slaying bass for a long time. I know it could really give you a ton of other nicknames. Been killing it on the tournament scene. And I think one thing I just wanted to lead out there, and you guys can talk about it, but, you know, how did you get into kayak fishing, and how long have you been at it now?
Jeremy?
Man, I've been fishing out of the kayak for quite a few years now. Just recreational stuff. As a matter of fact, I didn't really even know there was much of a tournament scene until just a couple of years ago. Really, I didn't get into it that seriously, and you know, I've been doing it long enough that I always loved the serenity and you can go places, man, that you're not going to bring a boat, and I just
right.
That's kind of how I got started in it, and. Then of course, you know, the world we live in now is full of social media stuff, and you see stuff on Facebook and Instagram, and you're like, hey, I want to do that. And then you just go do it. And it starts out, you know, like probably 99% of us do is starting out in the local stuff, local club tournaments, and buddies get together on a Saturday morning and go fishing, things like that.
So, yeah, last couple years, a little more tournament scenes and I've been fishing my whole life too, but I've been kayak fishing for almost a decade now, and then I got Jessica into it when we started, dating, and so she's been kayak fishing for 3 years. Dan, how long have you been like kayak fishing specifically?
I guess 4 years, so not nothing crazy.
Did you kind of stumble across it like Jeremie on social media, and kind of find a local tournament scene, or just ask your local shops around, hey, how you guys getting out on the tournaments? Or was it the local tournaments, the bass tournaments, the bass boat tournaments that kind of announced, hey, we have a kayak division, or we're doing a kayak tournament, anything like that happen?
Yeah, for me it might have been, I guess it's been 5 years, because I from 2012 to 15, I fished at the University of Montebello in college, just here locally.
Awesome.
And they're ranked number one right now, but we were always in the top 10. I was president of that for a while. And then on the last championship on Pickwick one year, I wrecked my boat, spun out 900 degrees going 60, just wrecked it. And then after that kind of, honestly, it shook me a little bit.
Yeah.
And then we had a kid like soon after, and my wife did. It didn't come out of me. And then after, so I just kind of put those two things together. It's like I didn't have time to fish. I had kind of taken a couple month break from it because it took forever to get the boat fixed. And then at the same time, I found kayak fishing. I'm like, this is like perfect for what I want to do. I can do everything I want to do as something less expensive, less maintenance, and just as much fun. And I really like. Some people think it's like kayak fishing is a step down from bass boat fishing.
Uh-huh.
And it 100% for me is not. Like, I'm just not into boat fishing I enjoy the different strategy, the physicality of kayak fishing, and the camaraderie between kayak anglers is much better than the boat side. So whenever you put those things together, it's the same sport, a little bit different, and I just could not love it anymore. And I'm totally 100% ate up with it.
Love it, man.
Yeah, that's
we
a good
totally
point.
agree. Great points. And between both of you guys, you both are great ambassadors for the sport. You're all over the place, all over the country, doing all kinds of events.
And speaking of events, now you guys are part of the Kayak Fishing League, KFL, if you will, and you're also on the Alabama Hammers team. And I know there's about 17 teams now that's in the KFL league. So tell us a little bit more about how you guys formed your team and maybe some of the experiences you had along the way.
Yeah, first, the Yak Shack being a sponsor of us, we want to say thank you to you. I mean, without y'all help us out, and you also help out our local club, Iron City Kayak Anglers, and without you, this would not have been possible. I kind of heard the idea of it. I think maybe because I fished for Montebello and I enjoy team stuff. That earlier in the year, last year now, me and Jeremie did a little team deal with a KBBT Kayak Bass Bracket Tour, which is like the sister kind of deal of the KFL.
Right, yeah.
And if you think kayak, like professional NFL football, kind of that, you just take that model and you put it into kayak fishing. I created a team with local guys, the best people I could think of. Then from there, John Lessman took it and ran with it. And we ended up, our season just finished. We finished in the top 4. We were 5-1, and we went to Texas and did well. Had a really great event.
Right.
Incredibly well for anywhere else. And but the team that we went against, one of the guys who put up 7 of their 10 fish, had the second best day in kayak fishing in the history of kayak fishing.
Wow.
So we just went up against a bandsaw and got beat fair and square. But we could not be happier with how the season turned out, and a lot of that was due to Jeremie and all the other team members, and they had great season. So really successful, really enjoyed it, and looking forward to it again next year.
Yeah, Jeremie, with KFL and the formats and being a team event, how is that different than some of the other tournaments or chapters or some of the other leagues that you guys have been a part of?
Well, it's different in a lot of ways. When you travel as a single individual in the kayak world, a lot of times you make buddies out on the road, and you get to share a house with them. And at least I did. That's usually how I traveled. And in that aspect, you kind of learn maybe to work as a little bit as a group, but not really so much, because at the end of the day, the guy sleeping in the room next to you, you're still going against him. But there are some advantages to that, and maybe some disadvantages to it. But the team thing was probably more new to me than it was to Dan. I'd never been a part of a team, and especially in kayak fishing before. So it took a little learning. It was a little bit of a learning curve, because at the end of the day, I've got some spots, and sometimes you just don't want nobody to know about them. But at the same time, you want your team to do good, and,
sure.
and you had to, you really had to kind of, lack of better terms, maybe swallow a little bit of pride and say, all right, guys, this is what I know, and this is what I've got, and kind of thing. And
right.
But man, you learn so much, and if I took anything away from this season at all, besides getting to travel and see parts of the country that I otherwise never would be just the amount of knowledge I learned from getting to pick these guys' brains, because our team was made up of 7 guys, and we were all 7 kind of had a little different way we approached fishing, but and then in some ways we were different, in some ways we were the same. And like our buddy Lance, that guy, he can do stuff with electronics that I didn't even know it could do, and the way he could manipulate those things and format them in different ways. And man, we went down to Florida together, and we sat there on the couch one night, and he showed that I learned just so much from him. And of course, Dan, anytime I get to go fishing with Dan, it's always a treat because you get to learn from him. And really, gosh, Dan,
you're welcome.
I think me and
Y'all
Dan
had an awesome team.
Yeah, we did, man. Dan and John did a jam up job of putting that team together. We were on a roll. Like Dan said, we just kind of ran into a buzzsaw in Texas that I don't care if you put 4 Russ Snyders on the same water as those guys, you're not going to beat them on their home waters on that day. You're just not. Like they were on them that day. But my hat goes off. I didn't get to make the trip. I had some work stuff come up, and Dan goes out there. Dan and Lance really go out and just put on a show. I mean, Texas thought they were going to walk away with it. And I think looking at the leaderboard about halfway through the day, maybe they decided, hey, we might want to change our strategy up a little bit because these guys are still here. And
we had over a 19-inch average for 10 fish.
Wow.
Holy crap.
Yeah, it was crazy.
And
Dan shows that. Dan catches his PB. Not to not take your moment from you, Dan, but I mean, he can go out there and do something like that, especially in a tournament. That's a special thing. I can't say enough about the way those guys performed all year, not just that day, but all year long, man. And I had a great time doing it. KFL's definitely a cool idea, and I think it had some growing pains this year, but it's going to be making a comeback, an even bigger comeback next season, and I think you're going to see a lot of more big names in this league next year as well.
It does sound like you guys have really become a family, and kind of talking about family, how is it, this may be kind of difficult, but how hard is it to manage the travel with work and family life at the same time?
For me, I've got kids that range from 12 to 1, and then a wife that she just always wants me around. I don't know what's wrong with her, but for some reason she just enjoys my company. And
slow down there, Brady Bunch.
Look, we have taken all measures necessary to make sure we're done. We've done everything we can do.
No more fishing team members?
No, we already have a full KFL team. So, yeah, it's difficult. Obviously, and I think anybody would say this, anybody that's married, you can't do this without someone who supports you at home. And my wife, she's one of the best at it. I mean, she really is. She only complains just a little bit when I go fishing, not really much at all. And any chance she gets to go with me, she'll jump in the truck and take off in a heartbeat. She enjoys the road, and even just going down the road and fishing with you guys. She's all about it. We got her a kayak this year, I guess it was earlier this year. We got her a kayak, and she's a big fan of it. She really enjoys it. So
that's good.
like I said, I can't thank her enough for what she's done and put up with this year.
Yeah, I hear you. But at least that's awesome. You got a good support group. How about you, Dan? Do you feel like it's kind of stressful? I know you have a busy work schedule too. How do you manage all of that?
Yeah, it's there's so many people, like there's guys who like sleep in their trucks and they try to do this full time. That ain't me. Like I love my life. I love where I live. I have a great, loving wife who I'm crazy about. I've got a 5-year-old son. He plays hockey and baseball. Yeah, hockey in the South. He had practice tonight.
Been catching fish too with you.
Yeah, he catches fish. I mean, so life is great, and family 100% always comes first. And I'm lucky enough to get away sometimes to go fish. Not as much as I'd like to, but it's always going to be a balance. So it's especially with limited vacation time, I wish I could go out there and compete on that national trail and fish every time, because I feel like I could, if I had more time on the water, like I could compete with anybody. So,
Totally believe
I'm
that.
I'm a 42-year-old man. I'm, the chances of me being a pro are past. So this is about as close as I get, and
Never know.
I go out there and do the best I can.
And I was going to try to explain, a little bit to folks that don't know, but with KFL, the way we're talking about it, how it works is these teams go out and fish, and you can keep catching fish, but it's your top 10 fish for the game, so to speak, against who you're playing that weekend, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And so,
anyone on the team can catch them. This year it was 3 home games, 3 away games, and then the playoffs. And so
it was awesome. It was fun to follow it, and it was great to be a part of it. The Yak Shack was honored just to be, involved at all. And you guys did an amazing job. So kudos to you guys in the inaugural year and kicking it off. I think that it was a huge success.
Yeah, I mean, if you would have said top 4 at the beginning of the season, I think that's the goal, and you hope to make it to the end. But yeah, top 4 is a great accomplishment, and we couldn't be happier.
Yeah, I mean, to Dan's point, obviously, like you said, if you'd have told us we were going to finish the top 4, we'd have been thrilled to death. But I think as the season went on, we really saw that, hey, we got a squad. We're a force to be reckoned with, and the closer we got to playoff time, we really thought, hey, we can make a serious run at this, and to not be there was a little disappointing. And then of course the way it all shook out, we felt like had we got the chance to go to Chickamauga, where the national championship is this coming weekend, we would have really, there was a pretty good chance we're walking away with a trophy and some cash. But like you said, it's nothing to be ashamed of. A lot of people didn't even give us a chance at the beginning of the season, but they know who we are now.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you guys have done really great. We're super proud of you all. I mean, the whole team, everybody has done an amazing job. And I know a minute ago, Jeremie was talking about Dan's PB in the last tournament, and I'm just curious. We're all about secrets on this podcast, so tell us, where have you caught, or what have you caught the best fish during KFL this year? Both of you tell us what your biggest fish was caught on during the season.
Well, Jeremie, I'll let you go first. I don't want to show you up.
Well, mine was mine wasn't during the KFL. Mine was during the Bassmasters.
I was about to say, I knew that was coming.
And mine was only a 23 3/4.
Only.
Yeah,
I didn't quite make the 2-footer club like my counterpart Dan here, but honestly, man, that fish really it surprised me that day. We were fishing the Bassmasters event on Eufaula, and if you've ever been to Lake Eufaula, there are tons of alligators everywhere. And I had missed a couple. I actually had missed 2 that were probably, one of them I know was over 5. I actually saw it. The other one was a giant too, but I didn't see it. And I missed 2 early that morning, and about an hour later, I kind of come around a point. And the cool thing about kayak fishing is we can launch before bass boats. So you can kind of get to an area before a bass boat, or the way our time slots are they allow us to launch before bass boats.
Good point.
So I got to an area that I knew was going to be kind of overrun with bass boats once that launched. So I got in there early and kind of held a spot down and missed a couple, and then I kind of come around a little point, and I didn't really want them to see what I was throwing because I didn't want them to pick it up and start catching my fish. So I just reached behind me, and the first rod I came to had just a white weightless fluke tied on. And I threw it just on a little patch of grass right there by a bridge. And I mean, I don't even think the fluke got wet. And she was on the line, and I'm screaming and hollering. Like, once I realized, hey, I've got a giant here, I'm pretty excited about it, and finally get it, fight with it for a few minutes. She run back up in the grass, and I knew what I had on I wasn't going to be able to muscle her out. I really had to just kind of wait her out and tire her out. So it took a few minutes to get her in the boat, but once I did, I commenced to screaming and hollering, and I think everybody in that little pocket thought I was either stupid or just caught a big fish. And those guys got to see it, and they were not real happy because they felt like I cut them off. But I was there first, and it's my fish.
I'll say this too
Yeah,
about
it was a good day, and
it was
I
the
wound
23
up
and a quarter.
big fish by like, I don't know, maybe a 30-seconds of an inch. My
Right.
buddy Nick winds up catching a 24 later in the day. And if you put my fish and his fish next to each other, like maybe there's a hair's difference, but his actually touched the 24 mark and mine did not. So,
I remember.
yeah, that was my biggest fish of the year, was 23 3/4.
Wow.
That's a fish of a lifetime, man.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Not to mention in a Bassmaster tournament.
Yeah.
Do what, Alan?
Not to mention in a Bassmaster tournament where you could have won big fish by a quarter of an inch. So.
Yeah, and see,
Ouch.
look, there's a cool thing about catching your PB anytime you go catch a PB, but to do it in a tournament, it's on another level in my opinion. Because to me it just means more, and to do it there, I just really felt like, at the time I was doing everything right, and I was. I'd missed a couple, but I'd caught some, and to catch that on that day was just special to me, and it's something I won't ever forget.
Love it. And you follow, cool place. So, Dan, how was it to make this 2-foot club recently?
Yeah, in that last tournament on Fairfield Lake out in Texas, there's just some absolute giants there. And, I was just fishing up on the bank and slow rolling it out to about 15 feet. And there was tons of fish and just happened to catch the right one. Caught a 24. It was definitely, no doubt, over 9 pounds. I caught one whenever I was a kid that was 10.5, and it wasn't over 10, so I didn't weigh it. But and I posted something different online, but I'll even give you a juice. It was I caught that giant fish on a 1/8 ounce 3/0 Okashira, Megabass Okashira.
Uh-huh.
It was a little tiny swim bait with a 3-inch spark shad, so an albino. So really and 8-pound line on a spinning reel.
That's great.
So the smallest bait, smallest line, and the biggest fish. So
Small profile in summer. I love that.
Mm-hmm.
That's a great approach, man.
Yeah, and
Good
Alan
job.
and I recently been talking about this line situation. Actually, on Monday, we had a friend of ours fishing with us for a church meetup, and it was kind of this group, and we're all fishing, and he throws also really small pound line, and Alan and I are always throwing 12-pound or more, and I feel like that's kind of been a problem for us in the summertime.
Right. And so, I mean,
and
go ahead.
And I use Seaguar. I know it's expensive, so I don't expect people that aren't as serious as I am to use it. But Seaguar and Bizex, if I use 12-pound braid, so a Sunline SX1 12-pound braid, and you learn to tie an Alberto knot to Seaguar. I use 8-pound Seaguar and Bizex, and since that braid will last at least a year, all year. So if you use just a leader on there, you're not using that much line, so a spool of line will last you for a long, long time.
Right.
So it's not too expensive if you do it that way.
Love
but
that.
if you tie a good knot and you have good line like that Seaguar, something crazy has to happen for it to break. Like I would have had to have rubbed against a dock post or something crazy. But if you watch your line and make sure it doesn't have any frays, you shouldn't have a problem catching a fish that big.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I use the same. I don't run. I run a 30-pound braid on my spinning reel, and I've always just tied a leader on of 8 or 10 or 12. It kind of depends on where I'm fishing and stuff. A lot of places I tend to fish has a lot of grass and things like that. So you kind of want something with a little more backbone, but 99% of the time I'm running a 17-pound in Bizex, which is made by Seaguar. It's the yellow box, and like Dan said, it is pretty expensive line, so you don't want to just waste it. But if I'm throwing a bait caster in anything, that's not punching or topwater, I've pretty much got 17-pound line tied on, and I've never had an issue with that breaking. And you can go smaller if you feel like, you're in super clear water. Where I fish a lot isn't very clear water, so the line size or the diameter, it doesn't really matter as much
Right.
as if you were fishing, like a Smith Lake or something.
I love it. Dude, these are great tips.
Yeah, good points.
And like, I want to kind of maybe end on a note that I'm going to pick your guys' brain a little bit. Jessica and I have a challenge, going on. She needs to catch one on the jig and a crankbait. I need to catch one on topwater and a spinnerbait. I actually lost one on a spinnerbait on Monday. I'm furious. And so that being said, what are something that you guys specifically are going to try to work on, either adding it to the repertoire for next year or something that you got better at this year that you want to improve upon for next year? Is there anything that you guys are really trying to focus and enhance your game with?
Dan, I'll let you go first so I can think on this for a minute.
Yeah, mine, I say the same dang thing every year, is a jerkbait. Chuck Wise, who is one of the guys on the team and, one of our fishing buddies, his number one bait is a jerkbait, and it just absolutely, it's one of those baits that it just looks natural. It catches them. It's a 4-season bait.
Sure
you
is.
Catch them all year on it. And
even I can catch them on jerkbait, Dan.
Yeah, for some reason the motion of a jerkbait in a topwater is difficult for me. It's even more difficult sitting down.
Mm-hmm.
So, but Chuck is great at it. He does it, catches a ton of fish with it. So, like every year, I'm going to continue to say jerkbait. But I think I usually throw a few different baits that kind of fill that gap. So it's not like a giant hole in my techniques, but it's something I definitely should be throwing more.
And we're talking hard bait, right? Hard jerk bait, couple trebles.
Yeah,
small, and soft jerk bait. I know Jeremie throws soft jerk bait a lot and stuff, but I love the hard jerk bait. Jessica's challenge bait is the crankbait too. So
I have a hard time as well. You're talking about, when you're sitting down low and cranking it down. I can do better with a rattle trap and cranking it up, but cranking it down, it starts floating to the top, and I'm just like, it's sideways, looking like it's being dragged back to me. Like it just doesn't work out well.
I love that, man. So, you get that added in. I know you catch them on square bills and throwing rattle traps and lipless cranks, so to speak, and little things like that. But the rip stops from Rapala have always been deadly for me. The suspended baits that just kind of sit there and then you can just rip them right through the water and just drives fish crazy.
Yep. Which if I threw one, I'll bet you this weekend, like one of the deeper jerk baits, that would have also have been a great bait in Texas where I was at, because it was like the fish were suspended. So if that's something I would have thrown, I could have used it in place of that swim bait and probably caught more of them. I don't know if they would have been, the bigs like that, but yeah, in that situation, it would have worked. That's the only thing I look back from last weekend that I kind of kicked myself a little, that if I would have thrown that out, maybe that would have put another fish or two in the boat.
Nice. I mean, you never know. And it's always good to ask stuff in. So, Jeremie, I know you're the best fisherman of all time. You've got everything down. You don't need to improve any part of your game. But have you thought anything?
Look, I can go ahead and tell you there's numerous things that I need to work on, color choices and just things like that. But, man, it's no secret, and I'll tell everybody, I've said this before, like, I don't fish deep water very well. Like, it's just one of those weird things. Like, you go fishing, if you stand on the bank, you throw towards the middle. If you get in the boat, you throw towards the bank kind of thing. And, I'm that guy that I always throw towards the bank, man. I always want to find those lay downs and that just little isolated patches of grass and just different things like that. And I really made it a point this past winter. I spent a lot of time on Lay Lake and a couple other places fishing deep, like deep cranking, things like that. And I felt like I really got better at it. But of course, there's always a season for that. And unfortunately, we don't really have a whole lot of kayak tournaments in the wintertime in Alabama. So,
maybe that needs to change.
Gunnersville's a good place. Well, it wouldn't hurt. Gunnersville's a cool place to go do some, to go throw a crankbait off a ledge. That tends to work pretty well there from time to time, or well, especially at certain times of the year. But I love a jerk bait. I don't throw the hard jerk baits as much as I probably should or could. I've got a ton of them. I don't ever throw them that much. I like my soft plastics. I love my soft plastics. To me, if you look back on it, I think the majority of your tournaments, whether it be in the kayak world or the big boat world, a lot of them are won with your soft plastics.
No doubt.
Whether it be using a trailer on a jig or a chatterbait or spinnerbait or just whatever. To me, I think the soft plastic world is more. It fits my game a little more. So yeah, I mean, if I had to pick something that I really wanted to focus on again this off season, it's I'm gonna say cranking, and not just cranking, but fishing deep in general. Like
Right.
throwing the neds and throwing the shaky heads on some deeper brush piles and even the wacky rig on some deeper brush piles,
Right.
things like that. But I don't do it enough like I should, and I kind of made it a point this last tournament I fished in Neely. I wanted to go do some of that, some deeper grass lines, and I knew, my teammates, they were going to carry what we needed, and I just kind of wanted to go see some areas on the main river. And I got there that morning, and I kind of knew it wasn't going to be a good time to do it, but I was going to do it anyway. I'm stubborn like that a lot of times, and I'm hard-headed, and I think, I'm going to do this, and regardless of what the fish say. And it just – sometimes it hurts me, man. I've got to get better at probably, knowing that I should do it, but making myself do it. Because I could sit there and say, all right, well, obviously this ain't working, but I'm going to keep doing it anyway. And it frustrates me sometimes because I want that to work, and it doesn't. It's just one of those things. I think at some point in time we all struggle with of changing up what we think we should be doing to what we know we should be doing.
Right. I kind of do that too. I'll throw what I know, and then I'll have what I'm supposed to, my little challenge bait, if you will, with Alan and myself going on right now. I'll have that tied on right next to me. I'll throw that for 10 minutes and it's not getting anything. And I'm like, all right, back to what I know.
Yeah. And this past Monday, Jessica caught one on a, 5.5 inch Tor swim worm.
But that's my go-to.
On a shaky head. Exactly. You got to throw what you're comfortable with and you're going to catch fish. And then me, I'm chasing a shad, a feeding frenzy, kind of, so to speak, a little shad ball. And I see these bass popping. I throw a spinnerbait through there and hook up. And I'm like freaking out because I'm like, about to get this challenge bait off my back.
I did get my first bite on a jig, though. You do remember that. You're right
yeah.
next to me. And I was like, oh, my gosh, that was a bite. So now that I know what the bite feels like, I'll know how to set the hook because I was not ready for that.
Right. And this was me, kind of knowing the technique is, hey, throw something flashy through these bait balls. And it worked. I mean, I didn't catch them. I got bent out. I had a really old spinnerbait on there. And I was trying to bend it back. And my buddy's fishing next to me throws a chatterbait through the same bait ball and pulls a fish out. I was just like, you did not just do that.
well, Jessica, going back, not to back up too much, but going back to the whole crankbait thing, and you talking about, you were really struggling to crank down on it or different things like that. And I'm sure but just to let the audience know, like, I know you see it can be overwhelming sometimes to. You say, hey, I want to buy a new rod. You go to Bass Pro Shop and there's 1,000 of them up there and you don't know. But those rods are very specific to certain techniques for a reason.
Yeah.
And cranking is one of those reasons. If you don't have a good cranking rod and the proper ratio reel for cranking, you're going to wear yourself out pretty quick trying to do it. You really are.
Right.
But those rods are made to do that type of stuff. So, my suggestion to anybody is, if you want to do this on a level that you're going to be competitive in, spend a little bit of money, get the equipment that you need, because at the end of the day, if you can't put fish in a boat, if you're too wore out to fish, you're not going to really do very well, and it's going to frustrate you.
Exactly. Yeah, I don't think my little ugly stick from the early 2000s was doing really much of anything for me.
I think one thing we can all agree on too is practice, and it's like any other sport, any other competition, any other game you guys play, you got to practice. You got to get out there and get on the water and try some different techniques. Really test yourself and get out of your comfort zone.
That's right.
Yeah, that's definitely. I spend a lot of time out of my comfort zone here lately. And I think we all have at some point in time.
Yeah, it's tough. You only get very limited time on the water. It's tough to make yourself go out there and do something that isn't overly productive, but it's something that you're used to doing or not comfortable doing. But if you do it and you do it enough times, make it difficult, get yourself out of the comfort zone. Eventually it will come. It just, you can watch all the videos, you can try to take all the shortcuts you can and add all the knowledge you can, but nothing beats being out there and using those baits and getting better and challenging yourself.
Exactly.
Yeah. And everybody needs to keep in mind, especially, the people that listen to this, and this is something I had to learn is, guys, this ain't like you're fishing in an aquarium. You're trying to trying to convince a wild animal to bite on something that you put on the end of a piece of string. And sometimes it's a lot, easier said than done.
Right.
And that you can go look at any boat world major tournament, and there's always going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 guys down at the bottom that catch 1, 2, a couple of fish that they're not catching these limits. So it's not like, these pros have it all figured out all the time either.
Sure.
I mean, these are wild animals that we're trying to catch. So
it's funny you say that because I always tell Alan I try to be the worm. And so literally under the water, I'll pretend I'm such a weirdo, but I'll pretend that the worm is I'm myself, bouncing off of rocks and trees. And I'm imagining what they see. And if you do that, I swear it helps. But if I'm frustrated and I'm not catching anything, I'm oh, it's because I'm not the worm today. Yep.
And look, there's a certain cadence to everything. And, once you figure out what that fish wants, that cadence that fish wants, it helps a lot. And I think Dan is probably one of the best that I know of that can figure that cadence out, especially fishing deeper water. He's the man at that kind of stuff.
Well, I think both you guys are great anglers. And you guys have had a lot of awesome input here. I know we've learned a lot. I hope everybody else that's listening learned something. And, Dan, thank you. Jeremy, seriously, thank you guys both so much for being on here with us.
Hey, can I give one plug real quick?
Sure.
Before we get off? All right, guys. So even though the team KFL season is over with, we do have one more event. It's the All-Star Game. It's going to be October 2nd. And you can follow along live on TV. Motion. It's the Motion Outdoor Network. You can find it on Roku and Amazon. You can download the app on your phone and watch.
Yep.
It's a new sports network. Just came out. The guy that actually owns the KFL, Greg Nosar, has started this network. I myself will be doing a sports show once a week on there.
That's awesome.
Once I get that off the ground, and we're going to do that. But you'll be able to follow along all season, watch the KFL, watch these guys fish. Learn a lot. I learn a lot just from watching fishing, and I know you guys will too. So follow along, check us out.
Love it.
We look forward to it. Like I said, All-Star Game, October 2nd, that morning. Check us out. Be a good time. Alan and Jessica, thank y'all for everything you've done for us this year. Thanks for having me on tonight.
No problem.
Course,
Dan, anything else?
Jeremy said, great. Thank you all so much for sponsoring the team, and we really appreciate it and everything you do for our community and Iron City Kayak Anglers. We couldn't have a better partner for it, and thank you all so much. If you need a kayak, go see these guys. Get you one.
Our pleasure, man. You guys are totally worth it. We can't wait to be involved next year in more ways. We're going to be doing a lot more things, so everybody stay tuned too. I'm sure we'll be dropping a lot of other future events and things that are going to be happening all year long. Thank you guys again.
Bye, y'all.
See y'all. See ya.
That was great. Thank you guys so much for being on. I hope everybody learned a little something there.
Yeah, I really enjoyed having them on and sharing their story about KFL and some of the tips and tricks about kayak fishing just in general.
And you guys, please be sure and give us your feedback. I hope you learned, like I said, something, and maybe you can take some of this out there on the water with you.
And thanks for listening to our podcast. As always, if you have any questions or have suggestions for future episodes, you can email us at podcast@theyakshack.com.
That's right. And as always, another amazing week. We can't wait to get back at this. Thank you guys very much for all the feedback and love and support.
And we'll see y'all next time.
Have a great one.
Bye, y'all.